Good afternoon. How are we doing today?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you doing, Chelsea?
Hi, sir. I'm great.
Good, good. You guys doing okay on the con law assignment I know is due tomorrow?
Well, I actually have a bit of a technical issue because my laptop broke down, and I have another one on order. I thought I would have had it by now, but FedEx is having delays, so I don't really, I don't know how I can figure that out. I tried contacting Professor Ventos, but I'm not getting through. So I'll just try my best to get it typed and everything by tomorrow somehow.
Well, um, I don't know where you are, so you may not be in Barbados, but do you have access to a library?
The UWI Law Library is open, but it closes at 4:30, and I have my son. I can't take him to UWI because they don't allow children on campus now.
Yeah.
So I and none of the computer labs are open in either case. So I don't. And the public library closes at the same time. Also,
Yeah.
he has his classes. So
Yeah. Um, well, have you reached out to the deputy dean, to Deputy Dean Foster? Because here's the thing. Here's why I'm sort of pushing you in this direction, is that there is always more room for flexibility for students who approach the administration before the deadline rather than after. Okay. So there's a lot more room for folks to help you if you approach them and say, I'm having this technical issue. I'm waiting, I need help with the device. Um, I need help figuring out how I'm going to handle device issues. Uh, if you do so before the deadline, if you come to the administration on Thursday and say I was unable to submit because of these device issues, you're going to aggravate everyone. And even if they are willing to help, they're going to be less willing to give as much help as they would as they might otherwise.
okay, well I will try to
Right.
email the dean today.
One of the things have you guys ever heard the saying, it's better to beg forgiveness than ask permission? Have you ever heard that?
I guess that's how it goes.
No, what I'm
No,
about to
sir.
say what I'm about to say is that statement is never true in academia, and it is never true in law. So there are people out there who will say that, and I am here to tell you that in the university and in the practice of law, it is absolutely false. Um, so, uh, so with that said, right? So we want to get you guys in and out of this tutorial as quickly as possible so you can get on with your day and continue working on Professor Ventos's assignment, because certainly that's something that's very important right now. The tutorial question this week is for you to explain for a client, and you'll recall we've done this before, right? The idea is we're dealing with someone who's not very sophisticated. So explain to a client the duty that an occupier owes to trespassers. So have either of you had any chance to look that over and think about that, or have you been busy with Professor Ventos's assignment?
Honestly, no, sir. I've been busy all week.
Name.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
So,
somebody else.
um, So why don't we take a few minutes and you can think about the question, and then we'll reconvene and we'll talk through it. And again, the goal is to move through this quickly and get this done as quickly as possible. But I don't want to give it short shrift. So I want to make sure that we do what we need to do to cement the issue in your mind, but I don't want to waste a lot of time doing it. So we'll take a few minutes. I have that it is 12:18. We will reconvene at 12:25 and go through as quickly as possible. Okay? So as always, I'm going to turn off my camera and mute myself. But if you need me, just post in the chat or come off mute and say something. I will still be here at my desk, just giving you space. Okay, so we are reconvening. Good afternoon. Welcome back. Welcome back. All right, so who would like to go first?
So I actually have a question from reading. Does the concept of common humanity, a duty of common humanity, is it that it changes if there is a foreseeable risk, or if I'm expecting trespassers, or is it the same? Because from what you were saying in class, it was something along the lines of I owe them to, not to watch them bleed to death.
Right.
Right.
So it's more, the analysis is more complicated than that, but the result in terms of what we see from the cases is that the duty of common humanity is actually very low, right? And so this is where some of the things that we talked about last week related to, did you post, are there open and obvious efforts to deter trespassers, right? Did you put up a fence? Did you put up no trespassing signs? Are there beware of guard dog signs, right? All these sorts of things that sort of make it open and obvious that you want people to stay off your property. You know, did you create the hazard? You know, how open and obvious is it? What resources do you have, right? All of these things are part of the analysis, but in terms of, at the end of the day, what the duty of common humanity actually entails is it entails a lot of risk management, right? A lot of things that you sort of do at the front end to make it hard for trespassers to come onto the property and injure themselves. And then if they do injure themselves, the duty not to sit there and watch them bleed out. Right? So does that make sense?
Yes, sir. I understand now.
Okay. So how would you advise a client? Who would like to go first? So I have a private question in the chat asking about the Occupiers Liability Acts in Barbados and Jamaica. And the important thing to remember about those acts with respect to this question is that neither of them change the duty owed to trespassers. And so What they are focused on is the way in which lawful visitors are treated, not trespassers.
So would it be good advice to say, or just make sure that you take as much precaution as you can, as in if is a case where you have an electric fence, make sure you put a big elaborate sign on this fence stating, yeah, this electric, don't touch it. Or if you got a dog, make sure that you have a nice visible sign. Like that's good enough advice. Just saying, make sure that you take all the necessary
Pretty much. Pretty much, right? The duty to trespassers is very low, and it's almost all about, making sure that any trespassers know that they shouldn't be coming and that there will be consequences if they do, you know. Um so another private question, again asking about uh the different acts. The law on liability to trespass in the case of Addy versus Dumbreck would not apply. Addy versus Dumbreck involved a child trespasser. Child trespassers have a different situation. Okay. So if you're advising a client, right, one of the things that you would want to know is, do you know, or do you have reason to think that children are trespassing on your property? If the answer is yes, then you need to talk about the duty owed to child trespassers, right? And in that case, certainly you would want to be able to um, explain to the client how these cases come into play. But again, as we discussed the first time we did this an activity of this type, right? The first time that we discussed how you communicate with clients, when you say a case name to a client, the client stops listening. So when I ask you, right, advise this client, your advice should not mention cases. So the answer to the question, does the case of Addy versus Dumbreck not apply? Unless you have reason to think that child trespassers are present, no. The case of Addy versus Dumbreck does not apply. And to be perfectly frank, I am a little tired of answering the tutorial question for you. I have asked you guys to answer the question. So far, I have yet to hear that from you. So where are you guys? So the question in the chat is, you would address them directly without mentioning case law, but rather sort of situational ethics, because for this question I answered it using case law. You absolutely would situate your answer in the case law, okay? And certainly you would want to footnote references so that I, as the examiner, know what you're drawing from, okay? But the advice to the client should not say, oh, well, if we turn to the case of Addy versus Dumbreck, we can see that this is because the client has stopped listening at this point. So does that make sense, right? How you're crafting this? You want to demonstrate that you know what you're drawing from for the examiner, but the text itself needs to be focused on giving the principles. So any answers that folks would like to offer?
Well, sir, I feel like I would, after figuring out the nature of the trespasser, in the event that
Mhm.
they're child trespassers, I would inform them, well, make sure there's nothing attractive to a child
Mhm.
on the property, especially if you also have something dangerous
Mhm.
on the property. You would make sure that you take every reasonable path, for like lack of a better word, to ensure that you inform any possible trespassers of the dangers that lay on your property. So if there's a dog, you put a beware um a sufficiently visible beware of dog sign. If the fence is electric, a danger, this is electric sign. Any reasonable precautions you would make sure to take.
Great, great. Okay. So what do you say when the client asks, well, what would be attractive to children?
I would say it's stuff like swing sets or pools. Um, so many things are attractive to children. Sand pits.
I mean, one question is, what do you think would be attractive to children? Right? It's okay to turn this back around to the client and to have them do the thinking, right?
Okay.
And to say, these are some things that could be, but you have to be the one, the whether or not there's something that's attractive to children is something that's going to depend on what's on the property. And so you have to ask, and so the question for the client becomes, what's on the property that you know of, right? Because you know the property better than I do, that you think might be attractive to children. And then you can have a conversation with the client about, you know, yep, you know, there's a swing set on the property that's obviously going to be attractive to children. Yes, there's a sand pit, children like to play in sand. you know yes, there's a quarry, and it's filled with water and children may swim in it, right? So all of these are things. This is part of having the conversation with the client, right? Is that you have to get information from the client in order to give them advice. And so part of the puzzle here is, how do you get the information you need from the client without tipping off what you're looking for? Because there are clients out there who will tell you what you want to hear, or at least what they think you want to hear. Um, and you can say, "Oh no, the most important thing is for you to be honest with me, even if it's bad," we can deal with bad, we can't deal with lying, right? You can say that, they will still lie to you. I've had it happen. I've had it happen to me, right? So it's a thing, right? You have to kind of trick the client into telling you what you need to know. So you sort of, one of the things that I always do, right, is I start by asking questions and I don't explain why I'm asking. I just say, what's on the property? And that gives me some information like, is there something attractive? Um, I'll ask things like, what have you done to keep people out? Right? Have you put in security? Have you put up beware of dog signs? Have you put up a fence? Right? Whatever. You know, what do your assets look like? How much cash flow do you have? Because remember, the resources of the occupier are relevant to determining whether they did everything that was reasonable to prevent trespassers from coming onto the property. So does that make sense, right? Do you see kind of how this conversation is shaped, right? You start by getting information from the client, and then from that information, you say, okay, these are the legal components, these are the legal principles that animate these issues. And then from that, you can develop recommendations for things that the client needs to do.
Okay, I understand.
Okay. So Ravi, can you take a stab at this for us? Now that you've sort of seen the shape of what this looks like? Ravi? Ravi, are you here? Okay. So rather than continue on like this, let me just ask, what questions do you guys have at this point before we wrap it up? What
My only
question? Go
the
ahead.
one about the changing of the, what was it? The duty. I asked it. You answered. Yeah, that was the only question that I came up that I really had. The one about the duty of humanity, right, sir?
Yeah.
Duty of common humanity.
And
Yeah, if it,
how the
right,
process for analysis is fairly complicated, but the results are relatively straightforward.
right, yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I didn't come across anything else that I.
Okay. So the chat asks, when addressing a client who has a problem with trespassers on their property, would one of the questions you ask them be, what type of persons do you usually find trespassing on the property? And then base your responses and questions from there. So the answer, I mean, probably, right? but then you have to be prepared for what happens when the client goes, I don't know. I don't know who these people are. I just, I find, I find trash on the property and, stuff, small things are being stolen. And so I know that there's something going on, but I don't know who's doing it. So that would be sort of the puzzle there. Okay. So anything else? Okay. If there's not any more questions, then we're going to wrap up. So I will see you guys tomorrow in the lecture, assuming that it goes on. Well, the lecture will happen, but I may, depending on who shows up, I may give that hour again like I did on Monday. So I will see you guys tomorrow. So take care and bye.